Yeah, good evening, and it's here Thursday evening, 8 p.m. I know Malaysia has a massive Olympic badminton match, so if you're signing in, either you don't love badminton or you're not big on national sports, or you're really passionate about culture transformation. But obviously, it could be that you're catching this recorded after the fact. Massive welcome to my great friend over many years, Aziph, who's head of culture transformation and employee engagement at Celcom. As you probably seen from the invite and the kind of advert for this LinkedIn Live, the topic tonight is leveraging culture for business transformation. So I couldn't think of a better person because you're very passionate about this, very experienced, and working a lot on these topics. So massive welcome, Aziph.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me for your first LinkedIn Live session. I'm truly honored. Thank you.
Yeah, I know you're doing a load of postings and also LinkedIn Live. So I'm the one learning from you. I'm the one who should be noticing. so uh, so maybe as you know, we wanted to hear a little bit and kind of pick your brains because I know a lot of folks will be signing in to also kind of hear real stories from the field, right? So we'll make it very nice and informal as always. So in terms of changes that you're noticing, could be over before COVID, it could be during COVID, it could be even in the last month or whatever. Are there any kind of major trends that you're seeing around culture and the topic of culture in organizations and from your work?
For sure. I think it has come to the forefront with this massive global experiment of working from home.
Hmm.
I think the conversation has gotten a bit more explicit about what kind of cultures do we have. And if before we didn't trust our workforce, or there was a lack of transparency, or you're not sure if your guys would be able to work without supervision, I think those questions have been answered over the past year and a half. We know that we trust our people. We know that they can become productive working from home. And that has become a cultural conversation, because previously either companies were, they were doing well enough that they didn't need to have that conversation, or they were just happy the way they were. So they didn't see a need to really talk about it. But those who are in the corporate culture space, would know that it's very, very important to have those conversations. But for us, obviously, I was brought in to as a culture transformation guy, and obviously the bosses there saw the need to talk about culture and to take action about culture. And I'm blessed to be there.
That's really interesting to hear. So there was kind of already. It wasn't like you were trying to like expand your portfolio with culture. There was actually they were looking for someone to help drive that. So the recognition that there was a value and a need was high, and this was before COVID, right?
For sure, yeah. I joined in early 2019, so I was in a year in Celcom, and then COVID hit in March. So yeah, it's been a very interesting ride.
It's very interesting to hear. I mean, some of the things we're seeing working with folks like yourself in many different industries is kind of both the kind of digital fatigue is kicking in. Initially, it was like exciting to work from home, more time with the family. I can have lunch with my family and kids or whatever, right? And now it's like people are just so tired and in a way missing live experiences, whether it's working experience or anything else, sports, shopping, a haircut, as you can see.
Exactly.
Like all these things, right? And at the same time, there's kind of more need to figure out how do you like. Previously, I spoke with another practitioner from a telco, and he shared with me that previously it was like culture activities and employment activities were like sports, dinners, social activities like CSR and so on, kind of things outside work that was kind of drizzled on top of the work experience to sweeten the deal in a sense, right? But now the channel through which you do culture activation is the same channel that people are tired of from their work experience. So how do you make it feel different, right? Um,
Yeah.
the other part is kind of as we don't have the time to maybe after an argument in a meeting or disagreement or whatever, we can't really say, oh, let's meet for lunch next week in the canteen or whatever, or let's go outside for a coffee at Starbucks or something. The need for kind of trust building as part of the culture and psychological safety has been
For
increased, right?
sure, for
At
sure.
least
We've seen the need.
in your
Yeah,
work.
we've definitely seen the need to kind of create that water cooler moment, right? Where
Yeah.
we have those uh, by chance encounters in the corridors or in the lifts, in the lobby, where a lot of things get done. You know that a lot of problems are solved in these little conversations, and you build trust. You get to see, look somebody in the eye and make sure they're who they are. And this is a bit more difficult to do online,
Mm,
so it does take a little bit more planning. You need to be a bit more deliberate about it. You need to
mm,
plan for times where people meet in unplanned situations. So you need to kind of artificially create these opportunities for people to have these casual chats. Because if you don't, then they'll be totally disconnected, because whatever free time they have will be with their kids and wives and cats, and the millions of things we have to do around the house.
yeah.
So we have to create those moments where we connect with our coworkers.
So it's almost like leaders, HR, managers have to be cognizant of the need to actually invest time and make it almost like a fixed agenda item to do non-work with colleagues, to actually have a virtual lunch, to have a human check-in, whatever, right? We have
For
what we call
sure,
it
for
Friday
sure.
and so on every
Yeah, a
Friday.
big part. Yeah, a
So,
big part of my work is actually that, because I need to manage upward, right? I need
yeah,
to manage the C levels. I need to manage the CEO, and but I'm so thankful that they kind of give me this their agenda and say, "Hey, where can you fit this in?" And they actually make time to this. Just this past week, we've met. We have 6 regions in Celcom around the country, and we've met with all of them.
wow,
Sorry, met with 5. We're meeting with the central region tomorrow, actually. So this takes a bit of work, because there's hundreds of people in each region, and we need to schedule these things. And the CEO has to come, and the CFO has to come. But we've made it into a fun thing that people actually look forward to. And the CEO has made it a point that this is like a non-agenda thing. You don't have to
yeah,
come, and you
exactly,
don't have to prepare. You come and chill, and we'll talk. And if you have something to share, you will. We have fun and we laugh. And I feel it's super very important for people
yeah,
to see their leaders that way. And what they've done really well, I think, is that the C-suite has actually bantered among themselves in front of everyone. Right? They play jokes among themselves, and I think that's super important, because they're usually seen from far away on this pedestal. They're up there on the
big names
mountaintop.
and big titles,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So when people see they're actually human, and they're hurting too, and they're talking about how difficult it is for them now to work from home, and it makes a huge difference, I think.
Yeah, it's like leaders need to become more vulnerable and relatable and more casual in a sense, where the old kind of hierarchy and title and all that needs to someone to take a step back, right, in the
For
background.
sure.
I guess we've also seen that many companies by now would have hired a substantial amount of their workforce during COVID and doing work from home. So there are many more colleagues who have never been in the office, who have never met in person, who don't even know what the space feels and looks like, right? And part of the connection to an organization is also the workplace and the offline meetings, obviously, as we discussed before, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, maybe talent have been, even those who were part of the organization before all this craziness hit us, right? Is also maybe the time alone, the time with family, the time worrying about health, worrying about job security. Now that I don't have the connection of my colleagues as close. I haven't gotten a hug from my colleagues for how long, and so on, right? Now I only really see the functional part of my work, what I'm doing on the screen every day, and what I'm sitting and writing or calls that I have. That's the work, right? So maybe the connection to the organization is decreased to some extent, and maybe people are starting asking, should I actually do something else with it? People have been talking about the great resignation that I can't remember the percentage, but I think it was 41% of workers. I think this was in the US, were considering changing jobs in this time, right? Do you see similar kind of trends that there's an issue on how do you onboard people that have never been to the office, and second, how do you keep people engaged when they're not in person?
Yeah, those are very, very important questions that all of us need to kind of spend some time and consider. We have continued hiring. And every month we have onboarding programs, but they're all been virtual. So I make it a point to be at those onboarding sessions and talk about the current culture and what who we are, what we do. So I think it's super important for new employees to really get a taste of what the culture is like. But obviously, the story has transformed when before we could actually show people, this is where you go and this is what you do, and this is how where we hang out. But you can't do that anymore. So we need to. What I've tried to incorporate is a lot more interactivity into my presentations. We use Menti a lot. Every
Yeah,
single
right.
meeting I have, we use Menti and we ask silly questions and serious questions, and we just get people to get involved. That has helped. But I myself have hired three people whom started after the pandemic, so they've only come to the office like once or twice over the
Yeah,
year that they've been working. So
get the laptop or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, to get there to go to meet IT. But this is the current reality. I've
Mm.
not seen a spike in people wanting to leave. I think in Malaysia, it's really trying to preserve the job that you have because so many
Yeah,
people are out of a job,
yeah, right.
and I believe we've not seen a spike in people leaving
Mm.
from where we're sitting. We don't see that, but
Do you think that there could be a post like after people return to the office, then there could be a spike
potentially.
when the economy recovers, or
And also because I think a lot of companies are expanding their talent pool, right? There's no
yeah,
longer this geographical requirement that you need to live 50
yeah,
kilometers from the office. But right now you can be across the world. And so, although people have lost jobs, I think people are now expanding the job search to include global companies who are working from home as the norm and are hiring global talent. I
yeah,
think that's a huge trend that is obviously a double-edged sword because we are in our industry competing with not just other telcos but other technology companies. I mean, we want the best customer service people, right? And they could be in
yeah,
hotels, and they're looking for work right now. They could
yeah.
be in transportation, and they're suffering.
Mm.
But they are also, when they rebound, the hotels and the airlines will be looking for people, and they'll be looking at our people who've been
The
working
king
all
of
this
farms.
while.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So there's both this kind of location is, if not dead, then certainly asleep at the moment. You could consider talent as an employer from around the planet, or certainly within a certain time zone difference. At the same time, talent is also thinking about like, could I be working for a company in Thailand or a company in Singapore from Malaysia, and could I get a Sing dollar pay, perhaps? So on both sides, there's more openness in a
yeah,
sense, and we
there's,
need to be more relevant for each other to stay together.
for sure.
Uh,
There's more mobility for sure
mm, mm.
with the workforce. Yeah.
I mean, linking a bit back to the business transformation question in your kind of environment as a telco plus, I guess, technology company. Um, how much is culture considered in terms of the business changes or business transformation strategic direction? How much is culture considered as an enabler, and could you share a little bit what isn't confidential in how you work with that? Yeah. What's the secret?
Obviously, it's a shift in
Mm,
thinking.
mm,
Like I said, when they were looking for someone and they hired me, they
yeah,
already had created this office of
yeah,
culture transformation, which
yeah,
didn't exist before.
yeah,
So as soon as I came in, the language was already, how can we get the culture to a place where we'll transform the way we work, we'll be more progressive,
yeah,
more perhaps even aggressive in certain areas,
yeah,
more risk taking and innovative in certain areas. So that conversation was already there. And because this new CEO at that time, Idham Nawawi, came on board, and he was, I think, you know, I'm blessed because when people ask me what's the key ingredient for doing what I'm doing, because I've been having pretty good success over these past 2 years, I said because I inherited a really good CEO. That's one of my
that's
key
really really.
success factors.
Mm,
Because it would be, I mean, the stuff that I'm doing without that level of support would be almost impossible, because then I'll be
No.
fighting, a daily battle, which is really tiring. But where I am now, it's not. I mean, instead, I get pushed. When can the culture move from here to here? How come, how can we nourish or nurture our people to think this way and not that? So I'm really happy to be given that freedom and given that mandate to go in and poke things around and push things to make sure that to get people to move, because as you know, people, if not provoked, would stay exactly the way they are and will be very happy with inertia, right? They'll be just sitting there. So it's kind of my job to rock the boat. It's kind of my job to push people's envelopes a little bit to see how they respond.
So in essence, I'm hearing that this is already part of how your CEO is thinking about business transformation. Is culture transformation is a key enabler for it, and that helps you as a practitioner drive this, right?
For
Can you
sure.
give a bit of flavor for what does a culture guy, as you call yourself, what does a culture guy do, and like how do you spend a week? What are the key things you're driving, and how's your kind of work even being measured, or yeah?
Right.
It could seem like very fluffy to some people, like maybe business people signing in here curious about culture, but not HR practitioners. Like, what does a culture guy do? Yeah,
True. Again, I was very blessed because when I first joined, I report to the CHRO.
yeah,
So the CHRO said, basically, here's an open ticket. Go fly around the country and meet everyone, because you
yeah,
need to know what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And that was a blessing in many ways. Number one, I got to listen authentically to what was really going on the on the ground. I'm
mm,
not just reading a report, an EES report, what's going on, but I'm actually meeting people. And we have about 3,500 people around the country, and some of them in very remote areas. So I probably spent a good 50% of my first year in Celcom just flying around meeting people. And
yeah,
we would have small meetings, big meetings, regional meetings. I'd go to Blue Cubes, which is our own retail outlets,
of
and I'd
course.
go early in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, because they open their shop at 9. And so the people would have to leave their homes early to come to the shop and meet me. So sometimes it became difficult, right?
Mm,
Or I would have to get them to stay back after they're on their feet for 8 hours serving customers. They have to
yeah,
stay back and talk to me for another half hour, 45 minutes. So
yeah,
sometimes it was testy, but because I was consistent, my team and I kept on going, kept on meeting people, and we were very open about it. We say, there's really no agenda. I just want to listen to you. What's going on?
mm,
How can I help you? How can I serve you? And we kept on repeating the message that they are our customers. I'm
yeah,
flying out from the HQ because you are my customer and you're important to me, and I want to know what's going on with you. How can I help
mm,
you? And that message, resonated with so many people, and because of that, a lot of people open up and speak with me, and I get a lot of information that perhaps if I was stuck in my office in the HQ, I never would have received. So I think that's just so critical for, if you are dealing in culture, to be kind of embedded in the goings on.
so be on the
Of
ground, go out to the business, see and understand how they operate
yeah,
and what challenges they're facing, and that
yeah,
can
and
obviously be hard right now.
it's
On
very
this
difficult right now, but
services,
we're doing that virtually. Yeah,
you're
yeah,
doing
like
it virtually.
we're doing it virtually every day, and I meet people every day around the country. It's actually become a lot easier for me because I don't have to buy tickets. I don't have to book hotel rooms. I'm there.
So
I don't have to, wake up early, and some of these places where we are, you cannot even fly in and out on the same day. So you
yeah,
have
right.
to stay the night at a small little hotel in this small little town, and meet with one meeting because there's only one shop there, and wait sometimes for the next day to fly out to another town. But I enjoy that because I enjoy meeting people.
Yeah,
But one thing it does, Chris, is it creates a lot of credibility, because
mm,
once they see that, a lot of things that I take from people are in confidence, and they need to trust me to know that I'm going to keep that in confidence.
yeah,
And another thing is they need to trust that if they're asking me to bring this up to the top, then I'll do it for them. And I was again very fortunate that sometimes something whispered to me in the small town in Sabah or Sarawak uh, is repeated in the town hall the next week, right? So when
Mm.
they see, hey, I said this and I gave this suggestion to Azif, and now the CEO is talking about this in a town hall, and that builds credibility and that
Yeah.
builds trust. Because if nothing happens to their suggestions, then that just kills trust, right? People don't
So
want to.
there's an
Why
element of
would they
kind
go
of
out?
the culture work I'm hearing is kind of also being an emotional CIA in a way for the top leadership, that being able to go out and take the true temperature on the ground. Because typically in large organizations, good news travel up very quickly, and I was the one who did it. Bad news, maybe not so much, right? So there's an element of kind of linking, creating empathy at in the top of the organization with what's the reality on the ground, and
Yeah,
then showing that that empathy is being acted on. So it's not just an engagement survey that no one looks at or reacts to, but it's a real effort and a real care,
yeah.
and that it's being taken seriously, right?
Yeah, and you were saying how we're doing it online now. What I'm telling the top management is now having these meetings that we're having right now is
Yeah,
the walking the floor of
yeah,
before.
right.
So you need to walk the floor and you need to show people you're available to them. And because of that message I've been giving the chiefs, uh, I have those times. So we schedule on a weekly basis, any of the C levels to meet any of different regions. And then the CEO himself, like I said, had this huge tour this past week, all regions. He's met all regions. And this is because they understand that this is the new way of showing up. This is
Yeah,
the new way. So we need to set up meetings sometimes, typically early in the morning before business starts, and all the C levels are there, and there's this round table, and I'm sometimes moderating that and making sure that the messages from the ground reach the top level as well as the vice versa. Of course, there's
being a bit
some.
of a connector in a sense, right.
Yeah, I mean that. I guess that's really my job is to
Yeah.
connect what's going on the ground to the C-suite.
I guess maybe on the contrary, so you could say maybe some colleagues tuning in is like, oh, I wish I had a CEO like that. I wish my job scope was like, I see the need for it, but they don't get it. On the other hand, there might be other folks who are, like you said, blessed to have the buy-in from the C-suite, have been tasked with this, and maybe you could say that if you look at some of the organizations that years ago already kind of highlighted this kind of um, way of working in a sense, the one of the things you can say is that they kind of just believed in having a very how can I say positive culture, collaborative culture, and so on. They didn't really look at evidence. They just like from the founders of tech companies like Google and Facebook and so on. They just kind of believed in that way of working. Right? But for companies that are coming from a more traditional, let's say telcos, banks, manufacturing, and retail and so on, that is probably not the legacy, right? So the curiosity I have here is a little bit like, how do we even define culture in the first place? How do we measure it? Because if there's too much belief in it, maybe it's a bit of considered black magic. We're just doing it because we believe in it. On the other hand, if we're very conservative, then we'll be really reviewing every comma of the culture definition. What are the behaviors? What are the metrics, and so on. And yeah, how do you see that question? How much should we just do it because we believe in it? How much should it be defined, measured, and so on?
I think we were a bit pragmatic. We knew that we needed alignment. So if you have a very strong purpose and that purpose is both top down and bottom up.
Yeah,
So when I first started, that was again because I was flying around the country. That was big part of my work. Is let's find out if we gave the opportunity to everyone. Let's build our culture statements. What's your purpose? What's your vision? What are the core values?
yeah,
And
right, right, right.
we had that conversation in every small town around the country. And I ran workshops after workshops after workshops in the HQ where most of us are and where all the leadership is. And we had all these long, hour-long conversations with the CEO and the C-suite. So at the culmination of that is we came up with a purpose statement that I believe is beautiful. It's three words: advancing our societies. So we rallied around that and made sure there's alignment in every single level of the organization. Everybody knows these three words are our purpose. And we wake up in the morning not to sell SIM cards, not to sell home Wi-Fi. I mean, that's what we do. But the purpose is we sell these things so that people can advance themselves and their families and their societies that they live in. And because of that belief, I think we've managed to do things a bit better than our competition. One of the things that happened, Chris, was when we first started MCO, the entire organization was run by the BCM, the Business Continuity Group. And I was invited into this group, and the CEO would chair this every single morning because honestly, we didn't know what was going on. Right, this is new for everyone. So
Yeah,
we it's a war. What was going on? So every single morning we would meet 8:30 in the morning, and CEO would chair. And the thing is, every time this committee made a decision, CEO would ask us, is this in line with our purpose? Is this going to advance our societies? And our vision is to become the most inspiring digital organization in Malaysia. So the next question would be, okay, if we take this decision, does it help us become the most inspiring digital organization? So those two questions he kept, like I said, I'm blessed because that's my job. But he keeps doing that, right? He keeps pushing, and it's so at the very top level, it's become a norm to answer those questions. And because of those questions, we made some really good decisions. And one of them is when MCMC instructed all telcos to provide one free GB of data to every single subscriber around the country. Many of our friends in other companies did the normal route. Okay, fill out a form, say yes, I want the data, jump through some hoops, do a little dance, and we'll give you a free GB. But we, because of these questions from the CEO, we made it so transparent. You don't have to do anything. We sent
yeah.
out proactive messages to our customer base. We said, don't do anything.
I
I'm
saw
going to
that. I'm a customer. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm going to give you your free GB. I'm going to use your free GB before we use the data that you pay for. And all these messages went out. And
Yeah.
because of that, I think our customer base really felt that we cared for them. And if you don't have that emotional connection with your customer base, you're in a tough spot. So we managed to get there. We managed to get good business results because of this fluffy culture kind of work that we do. So for me now it becomes easier to translate what we do to the top management because there are clear examples of how it works.
I love that. So I'm both hearing a strong link to your purpose as an organization, and that purpose was actually kind of co-created with employees at different levels.
Mhm.
We have had a similar experience in Human Inc., where we kind of said, what's actually one thing is, the founder, me, what is my vision, what's our mission, what's our core values, and what's the culture that we believe in, right? But then we started asking our folks at different levels, from interns and up, uh, what is actually the culture we have, not what Chris wants, but what is it that means to you to be part of the human culture, right? And then a guy called Will and also a lady called Sarah, he was our COO and Sarah's our head of people. They kind of co-created based on this input from our employees. What was the kind of common themes? What were the common values and so on, right? So I think there's a need to kind of both look at the business direction and strategy of the organization. Where are we going? Who are we becoming? What is it that our customers are looking for? What role does culture play in our strategy and our transformation? But I think it's equally important to look at, so where are people right now? What is it that would make them stay longer? What is it that would make their heartbeats faster? And what is the role of purpose? So we know that purpose-driven organizations typically outperform non-purpose driven organizations, right?
Yeah.
So what's our societal purpose? What's the value we want to create? But
Yeah.
I still want to press a little bit on the, so how do you define it and measure? Because let's say, God forbid, that your CEO gets recruited to another organization and suddenly you get a spreadsheet guy in who's like ice cold. So as if, where are the numbers? What's this culture stuff? Do we even need you to be here? Let's say, right, it could happen.
Well, that's one of the things that I have had to learn is how to translate what we're doing into business terms.
Yeah,
So,
right.
for example, I'm lucky I have that example because of how we treated our customers during this very very tough time, we outperformed our competition. We had lower attrition, we had lower churn, we had higher gains got higher ads. So it was all around good for us. So everything that I do, I have to kind of tie it to business. And because sometimes the C levels, that's all they understand. And they're very, very good at that, which is why they're there, right? They're there because they're very good at what they do. So if I want to insist that, okay, this is humans, we have to talk human language. You don't talk numbers with me. If I do that, I'm dead. I'm dead in the water. So I need to learn how to talk business with them. I need to show that, like you're saying, companies with strong purpose-driven companies outperform. So here's the data, right? There's the research. It outperforms Fortune 500 companies. They have very strong purposes, very strong cultures, and they outperform the market. So these sort of data points, I think it's critical for people like us when we talk to the business side, that they know that this isn't fluff. This isn't just because we want to be nice to people. It's
No.
about not just about that. It's about real business returns for the investments that you make. And it is, and make no mistake, it is investment. You need to invest time, energy, money to build these things. And that is a difficult conversation to have sometimes, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
something you have to
It's
do.
also a long play in a time that is crisis, right? Where people are preserving cash, worrying about next week, next month, next quarter, and not necessarily building for a long future, right? Will we even be around that long, or will we have been lost market share or so on, right? Or the market has
Yeah.
been reduced overall. So, what are the kind of, if you can give a feel for how is culture being reported or measured? Is it part of a balanced scorecard, or are there any kind of key metrics that you're looking at? I mean, many companies talk about ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score, or engagement scores, and so on.
Yeah. Generally, we use engagement scores that have traditionally been used, but the change we've made was that we've moved away from the once a year annual thing into more
Yeah,
pulses, more current, more
yeah,
recent kind of checks. And the culture measurements based on those are co owned by all of the chiefs.
yeah.
So that's one of the things I push really hard for, because we can't just, HR cannot own this.
Who
HR
owns
cannot be
it?
solely responsible
But
for
who
the
owns it then?
culture.
Is it a fatherless child, an orphan, or
Why,
how is it owned?
it's owned by me, and I report to the CHRO. But from the CEO to all the Cs, the CFO, CMO, all of them carry a culture component in their KPIs.
So
So
they're kind of
now,
uncles and aunties of culture in a sense.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it becomes real to them. It's not
yeah.
something just, okay, lah, let the CHRO handle this.
Good
But
luck.
now, yeah. So now even the CFO will have to look at it and say, hey, how can
Mm,
I support this, or how can I make sure that this is successful?
yeah, yeah,
And that, I think, changes the game, because if you don't have broad-based ownership of it, it's tough. It's tough.
yeah. So from that standpoint, I'm guessing that there is this question of should it sit with HR, should it sit with the CEO? Actually, I've heard some people say that actually culture comes from the top, and they say a fish rots from the head, right? So if you don't get that buy-in from the top, and not just buy-in, but maybe accountability and spread it out across different people, that it takes a village to raise a child, right?
True.
So unless you kind of split that accountability and say, so what's your role in marketing as a CMO? How are you driving culture, and what can marketing do to help? What are you doing as chief business officer? What's the role of business, development and sales
Yeah.
in creating culture? And what are we promising our sales teams and our customers and so on? And then the
Yeah.
HR kind of being more the enabler, or should HR be the owner and the others are the enablers? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, really, to me now, after being in it for 2.5 years, it doesn't matter. And, or uh, maybe I should say, it depends on the organization.
Yeah,
Because
right.
for us, it works perfectly now.
Yeah.
Initially, when I joined, I did feel that it should be part of the CEO's office. CEO needs to
Mm.
take it on from the top.
Yeah, yeah,
CEO
yeah.
must be the chief culture officer, right?
Mm.
And but now, because the CEO already plays that role, he doesn't need that title. He
Mm.
doesn't need a line from him to me, a
Mm.
solid line from him to me, because everyone sees that he is the chief culture officer. Because
Yeah.
every town hall, every time he speaks to the employees, all of his messages carry those cultural messages from him. and
Yeah.
I don't even have to prompt him anymore. Of course, initially I had to write all these things for him, make sure it's in the speech. I
Yeah.
had to talk to
Yeah.
his
Yeah. Yeah.
people who write the speech. I have to talk to his secretaries, but no longer. He drives that himself now,
Mm.
and so in our organization, it works fine as it is right now, even though it's somehow owned and operated by HR.
Yeah, yeah.
But
We had
I
this
think
discussion with a group of folks from C-suite and CHRO with some culture work that we're doing, and one of the comments that came up was kind of a bit more kind of from the maybe the spreadsheet type. How do we measure this? What are the right metrics? And very relevant and real questions. How do we show that if we invest X amount in culture, how do we calculate the ROI? Back to these kind of questions, right? Where you can say, to some extent, you can also say, if in a family we had to calculate the ROI on having dinner together, or the ROI on doing something for each other, or buying flowers for each other, or giving a little gift, or spending time together, right? Would the family be the same, right? And to some extent, there, I think there is an element of people make the world go round, and that if you have these values, then you're going to experience this value creation. And if you don't, you're not going to, and you can build the perfect dashboard, the perfect metrics, the perfect way to measure the value add of culture. But if you don't act on it, for example, there was the case where Google had, sorry, not Google, Uber had the ride-hailing service that we don't have here anymore, that got bought in Asia. They had beautiful values, like very amazing culture and whatever, right? Until the revelations came out from their office of sexism, abuse, toxic culture, and it actually cost them real value. Like their share point basically went down, right? Their valuation in the market went down because
Yeah,
of
I think there's more and more of those examples. So companies, now that they're used to the sustainability discussion, they
yeah,
know that if they, acted the way they used to act,
yeah,
with impunity, nobody's going to check, nobody's ever going to know. No longer. We all saw the AirAsia town hall where
yeah,
the Thai CEO just, I mean, this will definitely bite them in the behind, and they will suffer for this because it is a culture. It was accepted, and nobody stood up and say, please don't use this language, and nobody did it. Not one person that did that. And there was female C levels, and there were, all the people in the call, and they're all responsible for that
yeah,
because they didn't step up. So I think more and more companies are having that conversation because there's all of these examples, and social media allows for this sharing like instantaneously.
yeah,
And we've had our share of that. Obviously, we keep reminding our employees that whatever is within the family should remain within the family. We shouldn't screen cap and record and send it outside. Not because we're, afraid of anything. Sometimes, of course, there's some sensitive information,
yeah,
competitive information that we don't want others to see. But sometimes it was like, we have good news, and our employees are so happy to share that good news with their friends and family, and they post it on social media. And that's during MCO, that's not very kind. So we had to
mm,
say that message to our employees. People are suffering out there,
yeah.
right?
Dial it
People are
down a bit.
losing
Yeah,
work. They don't know where the next paycheck's coming from. They can't feed their kids. And when you
mm.
put is good news, it's good news
I
to
got a
you.
bonus or whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Something like,
Hooray! Yeah, yeah,
we need to remind people that there are people who live around us, and this is our
yeah. Mm.
society, and our job is to advance them, remember. So we keep reminding them of our values, and that has helped, I think,
Yeah,
tremendously. And lately, we've seen a surge of our employees going out and helping people within their own communities.
mm,
So, people, the white flag kind of movement,
yeah,
giving rice to
yeah,
people. So, our employees, and on their own accord, have raised funds and helped to feed people who live around their stores.
yeah,
So, I'm very proud of this fact that our people really live the values and really live the culture, even though it's relatively new. These
yeah.
these values that we're.
But that's very beautiful, right? And that's also again back to purpose and linking the overall purpose of the organization to individuals'
Sure.
own beliefs and values. What do I believe in, right? There
Yeah.
was a question in one of the comments, and also definitely reminding anyone seeing this live to feel free to drop questions or comments, your views in the comment section. or even after the fact in the recording. So Husni asked the question around, so someone's belief system is pretty much makes up the person's individual culture, right? Like how is culture created? Because I guess we're all co-creating it, right? And it keeps changing as we act differently. The culture actually transforms, right?
Of course.
So
And
what-
if thank you, Husni. If you don't actively manage corporate culture, then
Mm,
you are dependent on all these individual cultures, and some
yeah,
of them are very beautiful and helpful, and some of them are not. And some of them could be very beautiful for you as a person, but might not
not
work for the
relevant to the brand.
organization.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right, right.
so that's why it has to be managed. And human beings, being humans,
Yeah,
are individuals, and you cannot put everyone into a box and say they're either extroverts or introverts. That doesn't work because all of us are extroverts and introverts. And so it's a mistake to kind of say, oh, our people are this way or that way. That never works.
no,
So we need to take into account all of this diversity, and we must understand that diversity is beautiful. And some people are like this, and some people are not. But by having a very strong statement, very strong purpose that people can buy into, regardless of their personal cultures, so they can look and they cannot be against advancing our societies.
no, no, no.
Nobody can stand up
Especially
and
when
say,
it
"I
comes
really this is against my
to, we shouldn't. Yeah,
upbringing." So we shouldn't advance anyone except for
yeah,
ourselves.
yeah,
So if somebody is really strongly like that, perhaps they shouldn't work for us, right?
right.
It's not a good fit. It's not a good fit for us. But
Mm,
generally, people can say, "Yeah, this is relatively aligned to who I am as a person, and I can support this." And when they see the top management, the CEOs walking this talk, and they see all the C levels going out of their way to help others, this is really powerful. Then they can see role modeling happen, and they can see incentives for people who actually live up to those values.
yeah,
And then that's powerful in not to change anyone's individuality, but to align people to let's support a common goal and a
yeah.
common purpose. And that's very
Exactly. I
powerful.
always say that culture it kind of stems from the word cult, right? Which means something exclusive, not inclusive, right? So we are as an organization, as we design and grow our culture, we are both making ourselves open to the world. Diversity, inclusion is very important, and that's a big topic on its own, right? Not just about gender, but also ageism and different
Sure.
ability
Working
and
styles and all this.
now also maybe having workforce more globally and so on. So there are many things under diversity, right?
For sure.
We want to be open to work with anybody that can create value and who aligns to our purpose, but we also want to not be relevant for those who don't align with it, right? So companies have become more soulful. They are more like a football club or a
Yeah.
mosque or a church or whatever. Some people back in the 90s talked about corporate religion, right? To some extent, that it is in a way a belief system that we believe in a world like this. We want to see a world like this. Our mission is to make the world that way. We're looking for people who's fired up and excited about that, right? For us, it's about humanizing business, right? That's why we're talking about culture, right? So if you come and apply for Human Inc. and you don't want to humanize business, why should you be with us, right? At the same time, there's also this question of, so what if I'm a good telco engineer? Wouldn't it be good for you to hire me even if I'm not that fired up by the purpose? So some people would maybe challenge that view, but I do strongly believe that purpose is key, right? Husni is thanking you for the light bulb moment he got from your insight. So already thanks Husni and thanks Asif for that. That's already value created. Um,
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I
looking
mean,
looking a bit ahead, Asif, where do you think? Like now, we're talking about many of our clients are talking about like RTO, return to office. How's that going to look like, and how's that going to affect culture? Because now culture has become what it is virtually, right? Are you guys doing anything in terms of looking around the corner and saying, at some point when enough people have gotten the vaccine, SOPs are going to change. We're going to get out of EMCO. What does that mean for culture? Can culture play a role in it making that more effective? Some people might be sitting at home, some people might be in the office, but they will need to be on the same call. But some people are sitting in a group talking, even from a communication standpoint, which is part of culture.
yeah, for sure. It's something that we really need to plan for. And in terms of like keeping our people safe, obviously we have done a lot. We really pushed to get vaccines for our own people, especially our frontliners, and we have managed to secure them for all employees nationwide.
Yeah.
That's something we're quite proud of. And we just recently had the regional heads talk about how their people are in the regions, in the sales, in the retail areas, in the network areas, how what kind of work they're doing. So I think it's very important to highlight this because a lot of us, like for me, in support functions in the HQ, don't see this, right? We're not in sales. We don't have to go out and meet people during this period, during
Yeah.
this dangerous period where you have families at home, but you still go out. And without this force of passionate people going out, I mean, we cannot sustain our business. They have become really the lifeblood of everything that we do, and we truly appreciate them, and we really want to keep them as safe as possible.
Yeah. Right.
So they wouldn't have done that if they don't believe, if they don't have this common belief system. They just think, oh, I'm just earning a salary and
Cognitive.
I just
Yeah.
clock in and clock out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but they're not for sure because we see the numbers, and for a sales based organization like us, we can tell exactly who's pushing it and who's not just by looking at these numbers around the country. So for the from the cultural point of view, I think coming back to work is so critical. We're already looking at how can we decentralize people just to keep people safe,
Mm.
because previously we want a really nice building. We want to put thousands and thousands of people in there so people can collaborate and talk to each other. But now we're thinking,
Audio and all
maybe
that.
that's not a great idea if everybody's breathing the same air.
Yeah.
So we're kind of trying to spread people out, maybe look at satellite offices. We're looking at where people live and can we build a hub near where they live so they can reduce travel times, can keep the kind of closeness to their families that they're enjoying now, while still enjoying the tools to be productive, still enjoying some interaction in human touch with other people. So we're trying to find that balance. Where is that balance? Is it totally remote? Like many organizations have said, we're not coming back to the office, right? We're just going to stay home because people are productive at
That's
home.
a
Let's
yeah.
leave them home.
That's a legacy thing. Yeah.
So, but we're trying to find a middle ground. Is there a way where we can be decentralized yet have people in the same vicinity so that we can have
Mm.
that collaboration, we can spark that innovation, we can have these conversations with other human beings? Because face it, I mean, I'm lucky. I have a family, I have kids, and I have a wife. I have cats at home. But some people are really living in a small apartment by themselves, and can you imagine being by yourself for 13, 14, 16 months now? Oh my goodness, that's crazy. So some people are really suffering, and we have to, kind of address that. So some people are really raring to come back to work. Keep asking, boss, when can we come back to work? When can we come back to the office? And so we need to find that balance, I think.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And this is also where we're seeing with many of the organizations we're working with are kind of starting to open up these questions now. And it's funny that when people had to work from home, everyone was scared that everything would fall apart, nothing's going to get done, productivity is going to go down. I think there was probably almost a spike in productivity initially because it was a crisis moment. Everyone kind of huddled together virtually and said, "How do we get through this?" And maybe also fear of job loss also drove that people work much longer hours and are still working much longer hours. But there is a question of if we never return to the office or to some sort of offline experience together, where is creativity going to come from? Where's innovation going to come from?
Precisely.
Where are difficult conversations going to be had? Where we're going to build the bonds to get through those difficult projects, challenges, negative feedback, whatever it might be, right? Where there is a risk that we will lose some of the things that great builds a great culture, right? I think many of the clients are now seeing the opposite, where there's a fear of, am I going to be safe when I return to the office? Number one. And number two, am I going to be the only one in the office, right? Some people don't want to ever go back. Other people, like you said, are so keen to go back, right? There
Yeah.
will likely, at least a prediction for me, I'd love to hear your predictions, is going to be that there's going to be kind of a spike, hopefully not in cases, but in excitement of going back to the office. But after a while, people will be a bit more like So do I want to do that 1 hour drive into the office and 1 hour drive back? How important is it that I'm in person? If my other colleagues dialing in, I might as well dial in as well, right? So people will also be kind of balancing between what are the activities that really make sense, what's the use case for being in the office. If so, how should the where should the office be? How should it be designed? What would be the key features or use cases of a futuristic or future relevant office post working
Yeah.
from home?
Yeah.
When is it that leaders should insist on an in-person meeting? When is it that it's okay not to do it? Right? If we can work from anywhere, do I have to be in the country? Should I then be paid in country level salary, or should I be paid in a Singaporean salary because I'm based in Singapore? Or if I'm staying in a poorer country somewhere in Africa, should I then be paid less? I mean, there are many interesting applications for these conversations in terms of where society is going. Cities will probably not be the same after this because why drive through the traffic jam to do my shopping or to do will property prices actually increase in more remote areas? Possibly. Will they decrease in some of the city centers where people live close to the office conveniently, right? But what's the purpose now? What if I could get a house twice the size with an amazing view on the hilltop, right? Move to East Malaysia, but work with the corporate HQ. Or, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
What
So
kind
these are
of
tough
you have?
conversations.
Yeah, right. What do you see if you were to like look in the crystal ball? Of course, no one can get it right, but if we were to go wild here in the last few minutes of the call and get excited, like what might be some of the positive futures that you could see? Maybe the world might go in this direction when it comes to culture and future work, or maybe a bit more with the black hat. What if it goes to shit? Change is constant. Maybe all change isn't good, and maybe it's going to get worse. Yeah, some wild
Yeah.
guesses on the future there.
So I think safety would always be top of mind now. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe it wasn't before. We took so many things for granted, and
yeah.
it was not real for us. But now I think safety is so real and in the center of everything that it will become probably the key motivator for many people and many companies, because we don't want maybe people to come in because we don't want to put
To be
people
the
at risk.
cluster. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so those conversations need to be had. Like I said, we're already looking at a hybrid model where we can have people in a facility that we manage, but further apart from each
Would
other
it be
and
a
smaller
requirement
in
that
numbers.
sorry, would you think it would be a requirement in some organizations that unless you're vaccinated, you can't come to the office?
It
Can an
could be.
organization
I mean,
could
we're not having that
from
conversation,
an
but it
employment law
could
are you
be.
even allowed to? Can you force
That
people to vaccinate, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So these are all different types of conversation, but countries are already doing it. If you're not
Yeah.
vaccinated, you can't come in. So how do you do your job? If you're an international salesperson, how would
You
you
bring
go
your
to
best
this
to the
country if you're
client,
not
right?
vaccinated?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's going to get tricky. But like I said, it's going to be central in the conversation. So everything from what employment contracts look like in the future, would it include this, or would it include needing geographical location uh, as part of the contract? I think contracts will be a lot different than they are now. The
Yeah.
traditional permanent employee 9 to 5 maybe doesn't even exist now, but our contracts were kind of done in an era where nobody could even
You were selling
imagine
your time. Yeah, yeah.
the life that we're having now. So all of these is going to change.
Mm.
The way businesses are run is going to change, and our business, thankfully, is also a lot of it is online, and we had invested a lot in making sure that our organization and our people have the tools necessary to work from wherever they are, and that has been going on for a few years before COVID. So in a sense, we were very lucky that overnight, really, we could
Yeah,
tell people stay home, and they already had their laptops. Everybody had access to the cloud. Everybody had
yeah,
access to shared folders, so it was okay. Everybody
yeah.
managed. So
So
looking
those
into the
companies who
future.
are set up well for this would have thrived and done better, and would probably also find the return to office less painful, right? Those who weren't have paid a bigger price and may be scrambling also to figure that
Of
one out.
course, of
I
course.
know you're a very positive and excited guy. That's what I love about you. But if you were to take the paranoid hat on, maybe not so much in your own organization because you have the leadership buy-in and they're blessed to have you. But if you look at kind of many colleagues in the industry like I do as well, right? What would be your concern from a Malaysian standpoint, perhaps, in terms of what might be the things that other culture practitioners or other senior leaders organization might be getting wrong in working with culture in the next couple of years? What would the losers have done wrong, if you like, the losers of the culture battle? Yeah,
Well, a lot of it is beyond our control, Chris. If this pandemic goes on for an extended amount of time, right, and new variants come on board that make our vaccines irrelevant,
yeah,
and people just can't go out and do business because the way things are going now, small businesses, which are the blood of our economy, are suffering the most. And people like in my industry are insulated because everybody needs to use their phone, everybody needs data. So we continue to have revenue, although obviously it's still affected. But hospitality and travel are relatively dead. But if it goes on, let's say for another year or another 2 years, people can't go to school, people can't open small businesses. What will happen to the economy? Will we become like South Africa, where there's riots and people are looting stores because they can't eat, they can't work, so they can't buy food? I mean, I believe that's probably the worst case scenario for
yeah.
us, and
Could there be
government
an
needs
in
to
between? So
step up.
that would certainly be very negative, right? Could there be an in between where we can return to the office, the vaccine does work, but leaders and organizations are somehow getting this wrong, or maybe suddenly culture and engagement less important because now we can meet in the office again. Actually, never mind us if you don't have to worry so much about it. Could that happen? You think then it becomes
I'm
less
not.
important?
I'm not worried about it. I think that culture has already established itself as
Yeah.
being critical for business success, and I
Okay.
think the people who don't do it are just going to fall by the wayside, and they won't be competitive because not only you're competing for customers, you're definitely competing for employees because you need the talent, and the talent has many more options now. And like we were talking about, they don't even have to be in the country where they work, so the battle for good talent is going to get stronger and more tougher. And I think companies just have to figure this out, and they cannot survive if they are in the old era where they don't care about their culture.
Perfect note to kind of end on here because we're coming close to the hour. Time flies always with you, my friend. I think maybe to summarize a little bit, you can say that there's no doubt that culture has the need for an enabling culture has become more important, both from an employee standpoint and from a business transformation standpoint. Um, Very key to kind of summarize here. Very key to have senior leadership and board behind the need for culture, the value of culture, and invested in co-creating it. Key to engage your employees so that the culture is something that they care about and not just something that's helping the C-suite drive transformation and share value and so on. Key to be a connector as a culture practitioner, a culture guy or girl, to be a kind of a connector between the ground and the top and between the different sides of the business. Um, Thinking about safety in this time is obviously key. Thinking about how to deliver culture through virtual channels is a challenge on its own. Preparing for return to the office and what the office is or is going to become is key. So the innovation element, probably from an organizational standpoint of employment contracts, expectations, collaboration, modes of communication channels, and so on, will be key there. Right? We need to stay positive if we focus on our purpose. There's a lot that can be unlocked for that. So I'm also seeing a strong link from our convo between kind of sustainability and purpose-driven business, and having an effective culture has given you guys an advantage. I'm super grateful that you took this evening out despite the badminton game. I'm not sure what's the score at the moment, but we
I
should
don't
take
want
it.
to know.
It's scary stuff, right? I do invite everyone that tuned in for this to drop a comment. What did you take away from this? What are you seeing in your organization? Feel free to connect with me or Asif other colleagues commenting here on LinkedIn. Let's continue the conversation. And if you know anybody that you want to nominate as a guest, someone doing interesting work, whether HR people, culture people, business people, technology people, we look at many topics here. Just drop me a DM, and I'll love to look at that. So once again, Timakasi, thank you so much, bro. Really happy for you joining here, and excited to kind of get updates from the front field of culture in a very impressive piece of work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been a real honor. I was really enjoying this conversation. For those of you in a rush, zoom into the closing sections because Chris did a fantastic summary of everything we talked about in the past hour. In 2 minutes, he talked about everything we did. So just focus on that. But anyway, I really appreciate everyone in the chat, in the comment section. And thank you so much. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to have this conversation with all of you. Take care.
Thank you so much, Aziph. Stay strong, stay safe.
Ciao. Bye bye.